Welcome to Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams, our second hour. Our guest this hour is Andrew Vachss, whose new book comes out Tuesday. It's called Haiku, and it moves on from his Burke series of novels. It features a protagonist named Ho and a group of people. Andrew, tell me when I get this wrong and just stop me before I go off the rails, will you?
Doing good so far, Dave.
And it's, to me, it's really a...
Wait, hold it. I just realized a stupid thing comes out.
Okay.
Wait, what's today?
It comes out on the 3rd, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's about how a group of individuals sink to the bottom and figure their way out to at least getting on their legs again by acting together as individuals who begin to understand how to function as a community, as a society, as a functional group that respects all of its individual parts.
I think that's right around the edges of it, but I wouldn't want anybody to think that what you're calling a group remains a group.
Oh, no, they don't, actually. That's absolutely right.
And the fact is that what you're describing is the symbiosis that takes place among a group of people who came together for one reason and united around the first task they'd ever felt necessary to continue the existence of one of their members. But for that, they would continue to sort of quasi-function forever.
That's pretty well inarguable. On the other hand, the thing that first brings them together is simply survival, that they can survive a little bit better by working with each other.
I don't even think they work with each other. What they do is they each contribute something to the pot of stew that night.
Yeah.
That's it. Their ambitions, if any,
are to eat the next day.
Died a long time ago.
Right. Yes, and that's who we're dealing with. We're dealing people at rock bottom of society, who are as close to being disappearing, kind of.
That's exactly right. They're invisible. Because when people talk about, quote, the homeless as a kind of generic, once you lose your individuality, once you don't have a self, you're gone. That's where they are when this book begins.
And some of them have treatable psychological problems if they allowed themselves to be treated, but there are parts of their psychological issues and parts of their very practical issues don't let them do that. And some of them are there. One of the things that I was thinking the book is about really is about that everything has consequences, including choices that we don't make.
That's right. Not making a choice is a choice. No answer is a no answer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't figure this out until they've dropped so far down that the concept of choice is gone from their lives.
So it's funny because at one hand, obviously, enough to fantasize this world very well, and on the other side of it is there's something for people who aren't anywhere near that desperate or that bereft to learn from such a story.
God, I hope that's true, because I know
you can't sell books in the alley.
Yeah, exactly. Although I certainly have been over the years contacted by people who were homeless,
sure,
part of such and such a shelter, who'd found, some discarded copy of one of my books. But I'm not fantasizing about this world at all.
Well, I mean, the stories, these people are not exact replicas of actual people.
No, this isn't journalism
yes.
in the sense that I infiltrated this world and I'm reporting on it. But I know these people. The fantasy is creating this life-threatening problem for one of them that if they don't all join just for the purpose of solving that problem, the last shred of individuation, the last shred of hope, the one step before suicide is just where they are. They end up being allowed to make a choice when they thought such exalted status was never to be theirs again.
Now, you do know these people because portions of your work life, you haven't been such a person, but portions of your work life have put you in contact with such people.
They're a fact of life.
Well, that's true.
They're a fact of your life. It just like they are of mine. It's just that my work is much more likely to put me in close contact with this group and people who are card-carrying members of it.
And, to me, the homeless they're a complicated group of people because there's a reason every one of them is there.
Yep.
And not all people who are in the same economic circumstances or have the same psychological issues will become homeless. Right.
Absolutely right.
Well, I've had my share of contact. But at the same time, that means that when we walk down the street and we don't see them, we're participating too because we've made a no decision.
Yes, and you've also underscored and reaffirmed their self-concept, which is that they are, in fact, invisible.
Yeah.
People will sit in a Starbucks and philosophize about the homeless at the same time that they're very pleased. There's this big sign saying the restroom is for the use of customers only. And the irony of that will never penetrate.
Oh, they stepped over a body when they walked into the Starbucks is what I was thinking.
Oh, well, you see,
I've seen it happen.
If you live if you're broadcasting from the same
we're here in Midtown Manhattan.
Okay. There's no way to walk to work without seeing a dozen different variations on a group that's been labeled very simply as if it were one. The distance between a guy who has lost his job, can't find another, is so overwhelmed that he can't afford housing, and the paranoid schizophrenic who you see talking to himself, even having arguments with himself, who's been literally kicked out of a mental hospital, they're both homeless. To see them as one generic thing is, I don't know what you'd call it. If you think all
well,
black
it's part
people,
of the erasure.
Beg pardon?
It's part of reducing them all down to one thing is part of erasing them.
Exactly, and that's what all isms end up being. If you say all black people are this or all middle class people are that, you don't allow for any individualization. It makes your life very simple, but it blocks your understanding of that life.
Mm-hmm. But tell me how, this is a very different, the Burke novels revolved around a continuing group of people who were marginalized, but much less so than this group of people.
Yes.
So, and this group of people felt to me like, well, actually, it's very obvious at the end of this book, this isn't a series book.
That's correct.
Well, I think people who've read you for a long time will be wondering about that before they get into the book. That this is
Well, the worst part about that is the only venues where this book was sent for reviews are mystery venues. And bluntly, the people who review mysteries, leaving aside any issue of favor trading and all of that crap, they're just not equipped to read a novel. It wasn't marketed as a novel. I think anyone who buys this book expecting to see Burke in a new reincarnated form are going to be deeply, deeply disappointed.
Yeah, if anything, this is the professor reincarnated, but reincarnated in a very sketchy way. You wouldn't. You would have to read the whole. You'd have to.
Yep.
Yeah, you'd have to read the whole book to understand what I mean by that. Although some of it's pretty clear from page 1, I think.
Some of it, yes.
You know,
absolutely. But the whole concept of humble arrogance, which is what drives this book, is not a player in Burke's family. Burke's family is marginalized by choice. They don't want to be part of what they think of as citizens. This is a group that things happened to. They don't cause things to happen.
You mean the group in Haiku?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what they basically learn is they learn how to become actors again. Some of them do. Not everybody does.
That's correct. This isn't a magic pill book, and it's not a feel-good book. It's the blues.
Which you're so well known for your feel-good books.
Indeed, that's not. But, you know, the reason this is so different is I'm asking you to look at what you see every day and look closer.
And actually see it. Actually acknowledge that it's present. You know, it's one of the things that happens, and it happens, you know, believe me, it happens as much in Norwalk, Connecticut as it does in Manhattan,
of course,
in the same way, you know. And it actually out there, you know, in a more suburban environment, you're seeing it mow your lawn and pretending you're not seeing it.
Sure. But even if you saw it, this book is not an attempt to get people to donate money to, quote, help the homeless. It's really got nothing to do with that. It's a way, if I did it right, that people will see that there are many paths to that same door, and that our mental health, quote, system, unquote, is toxic. It's literally toxic, and we're all swallowing that pill.
Well, and because it really is true that not that long ago, it's probably been 30 years now, there weren't lots and lots of people walking around talking to themselves on the street.
That's
because
correct.
They were somewhere at least being warehoused and potentially being helped.
Yeah. I mean, obviously one, cannot be satisfied with the degree and skill of the care that the mentally ill receive. But this particular group, the cost of them not receiving services is that they actually represent a danger to everybody.
And a very lethal danger, not just,
Oh no, danger.
They might rob you.
No, danger as in lose your life danger.
Yeah.
Danger as in walking into a building with a bunch of weapons and emptying the place. This is really all about the street as viewed from the street. The greatest compliment I've gotten probably ever was from a news guy, John Cody out of Chicago, when he said, "There's no writing in this book." I read it and I'm there, but I never thought about it until it was over, but I didn't recognize any writing.
Yeah, it's the second time I found one word I would have changed. But the rest of the time, it just sounded like whenever there was something that wasn't said the way I would say it, it was just because that's the way that guy talked, if that makes any sense.
Well, that makes total sense, and I wish book reviewers got that. If somebody in a novel uses a word that's offensive to a particular group, the issue is not the word. The issue is whether that word is consistent with the character who speaks it. I'm not talking here, okay? That's not me.
Not in the lines, between the lines.
Yeah. I hope. I mean, look, it's the goal of everybody who gives a good goddamn about leaving footprints, that their work will count for something more than just a number of units sold. And I admit that I took on a very difficult task. This is, I wouldn't say it's a hard book to read in that it's difficult to comprehend, but if you want to really get all the juice that's in that lemon, you're going to have to really squeeze it.
You're gonna have to let those people be in your lives in a different way than I think, and they're not pleasant people, most of them.
No.
In fact, in some ways, the protagonist is pretty unpleasant. He's very, very conflicted about this humble arrogance, and he is reluctant to use his skills, which is why he is where he is, because he's made mistakes in using them in the past, and has given up on building on his successes. So it seems to me.
Oh no, right. He believes that he's walking this path of atonement, and in doing so has abandoned the narcissism that led him to start the walk. It isn't until a certain key moment that there's no point in us describing that he realizes it took a florid psychotic to penetrate that myth. That he has not left narcissism behind. That he is still thought of as master in the world he's inhabiting. Changing his address changed nothing.
And in that way, whether you've ever known a homeless person while they were homeless or not, it has some relevance for everybody's life, I think.
Oh, if it doesn't, I failed. I'm serious. I'll put it straight out like that.
Well, you got one testimonial here that it worked that way for me, and I think one of the things that it's really useful for if you have some what seem to be leadership skills, which through no fault of your own usually, it's very tricky to know how to use those. I think we're seeing that in Washington right now, and if you're afraid to use them, that won't solve the problem any better than using them where you shouldn't. Yeah,
and believe me, I know this in every fiber of my being. When I left the maximum security prison for aggressive, violent youth a number of years ago, we had accomplished so much with a population that was thought to be untouchable. I was so arrogant that I actually believed the structure would hold in my absence. And the consequences were horrific for some of those young men and for their victims as well. I made a terrible, terrible mistake, like saying I could pass the mantle of leadership. I failed to understand that people were following me, not a concept or a principle.
Well, and that is, for me, it's interesting. That's by the way, folks, if you really want to know what Andrew's talking about, the best description of it is in none of his writing, but it's in his wife Alice Vachss' book, Sex Crimes, because Alice worked there too, right? Isn't that right?
Alice, I met
right.
Alice because she was a law student, one of many different kinds of students in the greater Boston area who heard about this grand experiment we were undertaking. Massachusetts deinstitutionalized. They literally emptied every juvenile prison they had. But while that certainly gave them major points with the liberals, they knew they'd be annihilated by the right wing if there wasn't one place where those human beings who could not be released to the community would be housed. Their word for it was at a special needs treatment center or whatever. The word for it to everybody else in the system was garbage can. So when I talk about a prison, that's what I mean. I'm not talking about a place where kids could get in touch with their feelings. I'm talking about kids who are too dangerous to be at large. And when we succeeded, and let me just say this, I know you know this, Dave, but I don't know how many people do know it. If I can tell you that while I was in charge, there wasn't one rape, there wasn't one suicide, there wasn't one stabbing, you'd say, damn, from those guys with their history, that's amazing. However, if you have no idea about who I'm talking about with these kids, you'd say, well, of course there wasn't. Why should there be? So those are the kids we got. And one of the worst moments of my life was, some months after I'd left, horrible things were happening. I came back. I took one of the heavy hitters in there, a leadership guy. And I said, what went wrong? And he said, they, meaning staff, didn't keep the deal. You see?
I see.
They didn't keep the deal. So had I not been so arrogant as to think I'd implanted this so deeply that nobody would change it, tragedies could have been averted. I learned from that, and I vowed that someday I'd try and explain how that happens. I'd have a way to let people see it happen, and that's what this book is.
Well, but since that time, which must have been about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Basically, what's been decided is that what you did is inconceivable, wouldn't work, that basically abandonment is to the garbage can is the only thing that can be done with any of these human beings, whether they screwed up once or they screwed up 100 times.
Yeah, and when I'm talking about screw-ups, because the median crime in this place was homicide. So the idea that what we call the secure treatment unit could work has been worse than a hard sell. It's been kind of a no sale.
Yeah, people think it's a ludicrous fantasy, and that it never did work.
Oh no, people know it worked. I mean, we were getting. Don't forget.
That doesn't mean they admit they know it worked.
Oh, sure they did, because when you have other states sending us kids, there's that acknowledgement.
Oh, yeah. Then, I mean now.
Oh, now it's inconceivable. Now, you're right. You're absolutely right. We even have absolutely superb architect, Annette Nascimento, who, and it's on the site, actually has the floor plans completely laid out, sort of like in 3D, of the institution we need to build in order to house this group, to give us any chance at all of them being discharged and changing their lives, as opposed to being discharged until the next time.
Okay, let's you and I do this. Let's take a break.
Okay.
I need to take a couple of minutes break here, and we'll come back. We'll be at 866-99-SIRIUS. Maybe there's some folks who'd also like to talk not only about the book, but about the way that we treat people in general.
Well, let's face it, there's not going to be anybody talking about the book because nobody's read it yet.
Well, there's a few copies around.
Yeah.
I'm holding a bound galley, but there'll be lots of copies on Tuesday, and bookstores have been known to sneak things onto the shelves on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with either of those points. And if somebody actually has read the book and wants to talk about it, fine. But I wouldn't want to limit.
No. We want to talk about the issues because that's the kind of show it is.
Amen.
And also because we kind of have a history on this show of talking about issues. So we'll be at 866-99-SIRIUS, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Instead of putting up a fight, treat the youths right. You'll be playing with dynamite. Treat the youths right.
Jimmy Cliff here on Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams. My guest is Andrew Vachss. His new book is called Haiku. We've been talking about what it means to be invisible in America, what it means to have a chance to recover from a hideous life scenario. And there's a great thing in the book, and I was just flipping through, trying to find it. It's very early in the book where Ho, the narrator and protagonist, basically says that, what he learned, the most important thing he learned was to listen.
Yes.
So I think that on that note, I think we ought to take some. That was Andrew. And I think on that note, we probably ought to take some calls. What do you say, Andrew?
Do it, sure.
Great. This is Mike in Portland, Maine, a community mental health worker.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi.
Just tuned in, so I don't know what came before this, but I was certainly intrigued. No, I've read a couple of Mr. Vachss books in years past and like them a lot. But the concept of people we throw away or hide rings true with me. In my job, I work with the most seriously mentally ill folks who are able to or committed to the community, trying to keep them housed, trying to keep them alive.
So they're not institutionalized, but they're out in the world, but they're the most extreme of people who are on the street.
Yeah, right.
That's why this gentleman's program exists.
Yeah, and we do throw them away, and I have some strong feelings about why we do that, and it's about hiding from ourselves and our own potentials. I've been doing this a long time now. I've ran a group home for a number of years. I've been working out on the street in what we call an assertive community treatment team now for 3 years.
Yeah. So the acronym for that would be what?
ACT.
Yeah. Well, ask David if he's ever heard that term before.
A few times, yes.
Yeah. And it comes in all different flavors.
No, my point is that an ACT team plays a key role in this book.
Oh, does it really? Good.
That's my, I don't know the fancy way to say it. I think it's homage, but that's my way of giving honor and recognition to people who stand between those who really shouldn't be walking around and the rest of us. There are all kinds of people where we can raise their GAF. Am I right?
Yes, right.
But only GAF, Global Assessment of Functioning, only if there's an actual human interaction, not just dispensing of pills.
Yes, very much. People need connection. They need to be treated like people, and they need to see the value in their lives themselves, which very often they cannot. They've been given the message for a long time that they are worthless.
So, you're going to love this book, pal.
You are. This is a story. But Mike, you were saying about that you had some thoughts about why we allow people to continue feeling that way? Or how people become, or was it how people get to feel this way?
Well, it's why our society seems to want it that way.
Yeah.
It's because we don't dare to do any self-examination about what our own potentialities might have been had one or two little things gone differently in our lives. That's all of us.
Oh, yeah.
I think that relentless self-examination is unheard of for most folks.
Well, if you don't have it thrown in your face, yeah, I think that's probably understandable. So it's why I try, not always successfully, to not get too angry about what we do with folks who are in this situation. But sometimes it gets the better of me. But then I do have insights and I have perspective.
You don't mean angry at the people who are in the situation, but
No.
angry at the circumstances that set them up for this situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have my regular relief fantasy of going up to Augusta, that's our capital, and laying about me with a baseball bat, at least, I can't make you mentally ill, but if I could give you a good brain injury and then see how you do without proper help, maybe you get some idea of what it's like. These folks that I work with are, by and large, working harder every day just to get through the day than you or I ever thought of. I have immense respect for the folks who somehow rise to the occasion just to get through the day and survive.
And if you communicate that respect, you've already altered their self-perception.
Yeah, I think
so.
The
reason you want to go to Augusta, the state capitol, with a baseball bat, let's tell the truth here. The only reason ACT programs exist, and they're certainly not confined to the state of Maine.
No.
The only reason they exist is because when deinstitutionalization was seen as a way to save a ton of money, the results were intolerable to citizens. So the government had to fund something for the walking wounded.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. In our case, in the state of Maine, it was the result of a class action lawsuit after some very bad things happened in our Maine, in the state hospital. And so they did this, but yes, you're right, exactly. They looked at it as a way not to spend any more money and quite potentially to spend less money, which, seems to me...
I take it for granted you're radically underfunded.
Of course. Yeah, and with the events of the last couple of years, I made the joke to one of my colleagues the other day that the bad old days are now the good old days.
Yeah,
from our point of view,
it's not wrong.
Yeah, it is. We have in our model of service, we have a doctor, nurses, and then clinicians like me. And we're supposed to be keeping close contact with folks. And we work as a team. It's an everybody sees everybody kind of model. It's not just one clinician seeing one person and that's all. And we work in concert. We meet every day. We talk about what's going on with our folks. But the caseloads have just gone nuts, and they've done things that I just don't understand. In our case, we had 3 levels of community support. They eliminated the middle level a while back. And with that, some very important services that a whole lot of people needed, like nursing services, having your meds packed in a caddy so you can keep straight on it, and if you at least want to take your meds, that you have the ability to keep track of it, just all kinds of little stuff like that. And when they in our case, when they eliminated that middle level, what happened was we had to put the folks in that middle level of support somewhere. So a lot of them went down to the lower level, which was basically like, you'll see a clinician once a week, maybe something like that. Or up to our level, which in some cases was probably over-serving. And it also put us right up against the wall trying to figure out how to serve all the folks that we had. And so when we do our scheduling now for the next week, it's more like triage than scheduling.
It is triage, and let me prove it to you. You have an MSW, right?
No, I don't. I just I'm a community, what is it called, mental health rehab tech.
Oh, so under ACT you'd be case manager like that?
Yeah, like that. Yep.
Okay. In social work schools, the concept of doing what you're doing, which is literally street level, isn't even mentioned. The whole idea
it's treated
is,
as if it doesn't exist?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I take some issue with that. That was, I mean, it was taught academically when I retreaded a long time ago into social work from a previous career as a musician. We had, it was taught, I mean, but it was only academics, and a lot of the folks that teach this stuff are teaching it because they weren't terribly good at it on the street, and or they didn't like it. Those two usually go together. So there are always going to be deficiencies in that way.
I don't believe it's teaching something to introduce the concept and not connect it to what are your goals and your expectations of this profession. And I've talked to, I can't tell you how many MSWs over the years, and they want to do sit-down therapy. That's it.
Well, yeah, I guess there are those folks. I mean, that isn't on my team.
Well, no, not on any acting.
That's not the case. But we have therapists, and we do one-on-one therapy. Not as much as we would like. Again, because of the funding crunch and caseloads and all of that. But I mean, there are times and places when that one-on-one therapy is exactly the right thing. If the therapist has been around a while, didn't learn all their therapy in books, but got level for a while.
I'm not saying that sit-down therapy is bad. I'm saying that the only reason ACT exists is because the gap between people who would voluntarily come in and do sit-down therapy because they've identified problems in their life they want to work on, and the people that you work with is galactic.
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Yep, there's a lot of folks.
So, Mike, part of the challenge for you is communicating to these people that they do have a problem that has, if not some solutions, at least some ways of addressing it to improve conditions?
Oh, hell, these guys are out there trying to find a flop house that will take people that ACT refers. Right?
Yeah, it's tough. Housing is one of our biggest challenges. Just getting a housing subsidy for now, the way it works here is, first of all, you're only a priority one if you're coming right out of the hospital or out of jail or something like that. Sure. And now it is taking, once you are approved, it's taking to get the, not Section 8, but a lower level of subsidy while you're waiting for Section 8, it takes 5 or 6 months now. And they insist now that you prove you're well and truly homeless, and that does not include couch surfing.
I understand.
So that if you have any family resources at all, you need to cut yourself off from them, or they won't help you from them, or they won't help you at all.
You can talk about this for years because prisons discharge mentally ill human beings all the time, but they also discharge people who are stone-cold hustlers and realize that once they can get a disability diagnosis, they've got a free pass.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a pretty low-level free pass, but
it's not such a low level if it means that you're going to have a get-out-of-jail-free card when you commit your next crime.
Well, not here. We've got a lot of mentally ill folks in jail, big time, both undiagnosed.
I understand that, but those people didn't present an NGI defense, right?
No, that's pretty tough to do. We've had some folks.
Not when the government certified you as crazy.
NGI is
not guilty by reason of insanity.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we don't see a whole lot.
Well,
of that
you see a whole lot more of that probably with hustlers than you do with people who are really genuinely, have the problem with the severity that you're talking about.
The people who are most articulate about their problems and their issues are malingerers.
Yeah, well, Mike, you know how it works. It's like who plays guitar better, the guy who plays a guitar 6 nights a week or the guy who talks about it?
Yeah. I mean, and that's not to. I don't want to leave aside, what I've sometimes in my more cynical moments called the worried well, because there are folks with who are less impaired, who still have, by dint of either genetics and or very poor upbringings and abuse and all of that stuff. I've worked with folks like that as well, who had more of a shot of being able to get back out and work. In my experience, I have not run into a whole lot of folks, some, but not a ton of folks that I would actually consider malingerers.
Well, try calling up your opposite number ACT team in New York or Chicago or places like that. I think you'll get a different answer.
Yeah, and come to think of it, if you are hustling at a fairly low level, probably Maine would be contraindicated because on the days that you strike out, you're liable to have severe, survival, really immediate survival issues. And that's one of the things that always, when I realized the first time I was in Portland that there really were street people in Portland, it was very frightening.
They don't have street people in Beverly Hills because they're not allowed.
Well, no, I understand that. I just meant because I grew up in a cold weather climate, and I know even though Portland's on the coast and mild for Maine, it ain't mild for anywhere else.
Well, yeah, and of course Portland is where you only have 3-4 places in Maine where folks who need a lot of help or need services can congregate. So the vast majority of Mainers never see this.
Right.
Or only through their car window when they come down to Portland.
But I think you'll be pleased, Mike, with what you find in Haiku, because this isn't a book with heroes, but it is a book with just successes and failures.
Well, if there are heroes, it's the ACT team, literally.
Yes, absolutely. That was exactly where I was going. Because the people who basically say, "Okay, I'll take a chance that this will work, this crazy scheme." Or I'll take it, or I will come to you rather than you coming to me, whether that means emotionally or sometimes even physically, are only the ACT people. And they're the only people really who acknowledge the existence of these guys.
Yeah, and hence another reason for writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's an exaggeration if I say, 99.4% of everybody who buys this book and reads it will understand that there actually are ACT teams. It's a novel.
Well, and in the society that we've managed to create over the last few decades, it does seem a little like you're doing science fiction work, I presume, Mike.
Absolutely. Oh, I know.
And no, I'm thinking Mike knows.
Well, yeah. There is. I've been doing this. 7 years now, I guess, something like that. And I've seen stuff that and heard stuff that I just don't think most folks would credit.
So where were you when they were writing reviews of my first book and saying I must have a demented, sick mind to conjure up such impossible, horrible things?
Well, you maybe you do. I mean, look. One of the one of the lines that I have found to be very useful.
Now that's a review.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, one of the lines that I found to be very useful in establishing that empathic connection with folks, and getting them to understand that I begin to understand, is I ask them this simple question: have you ever in your life met anybody that you consider to be 100% sane? And invariably the answer is no. I don't know anybody that's completely sane. Number one, I think they'd be, boring. But
if that was the criteria, I can introduce you to thousands.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean that gets back to what I was saying earlier. It's we put these people away. We on the street, we hide from them because at some level, I think most of us understand that it is a there but for the grace of God go I situation. This could have happened to you or me.
Yes, but if you really accept that, then you have the obligation out of simple human compassion to do something about it. So we pretend they don't exist.
Well, yeah,
it's not as simple as there but for the grace of God go I. It's the denial of that.
Yeah.
It's the denial that's the problem.
Don't forget, it's also people who will report accurately that some people are in the homeless business. There's a overwhelming impression, which has faded somewhat because of the economic times, that anybody who wants a job could find something. And
You know what? On that note, Mike, I want to take this next call because I happen to know the caller, and I think he has some things to say about that very thing.
All right. You guys have a good
All right.
day.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Got Stephen in Burbank here on Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams. Stephen, you're on with Andrew Vachss and Dave Marsh. How you doing this week?
Hi, Dave. Hi, Andrew. Well, having been on the other side of where Mike is now, the prevailing belief, and it's still through society today, is that you can get what you need through violence. And when I was in the state hospital here in California, Camarillo, for 6 weeks, it was because I had committed acts of violence. And at that time, Reagan was governor, you had to jump through some serious hoops. Fortunately for me, it was the public defender that said, sign here. And I was self-committed. And when I was there for the 6 weeks, hardly any therapy at all. And when there was a ruckus, the nurse said, well, you're going before staff, who happened to be Dr. Hamill. And he took my blood pressure. He said, are you taking your medication, which at that time was Stelazine. In LA County Mid-Central, it was Thorazine, the highest dosage you could get. And he took my blood pressure. He said, you're not taking your medication, are you? I said, no. And he said, you must be sane. He signed me out. Boom, and I was out of there. I still had to go to court for the act of violence, but I had a support structure. My mother lived in a place, and there was room for me to stay there with her, which I did. And I waited for the court date, which was 6 months later, sweating, my eyes out, and reading a hell of a lot of science fiction, including H.P. Lovecraft and all that other neat stuff. And finally here we are in Burbank Court, and the judge says, what have you done for yourself, young man? And I said, well, I went and got myself some help. He said, case dismissed. And what I did was a Los Angeles County deputy sheriff was nudging a homeless man in the processing floor of Los Angeles County Mid-Central Jail. I ran up, kicked him in the crotch, and righteously got mangled. I mean, mace, they were holding my eyes open.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry.
Stephen, no, actually, what it is I've got 2 minutes, and I want Andrew to react to some of this.
There's nothing that this gentleman said that's a surprise. To me, the only thing that's worth extracting, and I understand it's all valuable to him, but the only thing that's worth extracting is that there are a serious number of people in America who believe the only way they can get what they want / need is through violence, and they're not always wrong. That's not always a decision made by a crazy person. There are people who say there's nothing for me, there's no path for me, there's no options for me, but if I can pick up a gun, or if I can move some powder, or if I can coerce some young women, I can live, and I can live even decently.
Oh, yeah. And you know, I mean, you don't have to be around the hip hop community very long before you find people who are like that, even though they've got hip hop.
Yeah, and you know,
because
look,
they're marginal there. I don't mean
yeah, I
celebrities who
understand,
are
but
playing
violence
games.
works. You can't pretend violence doesn't work. You can only say that we don't want to be the recipient of it.
Now, I got 30 seconds left, Andrew. Should I thank you without us summing up? You want to come back after the hour? That'll be about in 7 minutes, or should we plan on doing this again sometime soon?
If I'm happy to hang with you, Dave.
All right. Well, let's go. You know, we're gonna Frank Joyce and Kevin Gray will, as usual, join us, and you'll come back for the other hour. Thank you.
Oh, if Kevin's going to be there, I got something to tell him anyway. All
right. Well, great. We'll be back with Andrew Vachss and Frank Joyce. Welcome back to Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams, although today what we're dealing with right now with author Andrew Vachss, whose new book is called Haiku. It's a novel about a group of homeless people who are struggling to both survive and to figure out how to work together and to find some help. And also with us now for this hour is Frank Joyce with the underreported story of the week and/or some contributions to this very topic.
Well, hopefully, Dave, this will be both, and it's always an honor to be on with Andrew. And as I've said before, I'm a big fan from way back. I do have a copy.
Gave me my copy of Strega.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Oh, if you're the guy, I owe you a great debt of thanks.
Oh no, not as much as I owe. Not as much as I owe you, but I do have a copy of the book, and I'm a few pages into it. But my story today, and Dave, as you know, I always have tough choices to make because there's always a lot of unreported stories and underreported stories. But one today, in a very broad context, fits, I think, particularly with something you said in the last hour, Andrew, about sort of the mental health system and that we have in this country. And it was reported on truthout.org, which is a good place for people to go, I think, in general, this week. And it's about a very courageous woman whose name is Dr. Trudy Bond, who is a psychologist in Ohio who has been conducting what is all too lonely a crusade to get, among others, the Louisiana State Board of Examiners of Psychologists to look at the role of a guy by the name of Colonel Larry James, who was a psychologist who was a very high-ranking advisor on interrogations for the U.S. military in Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib, and who has his fingerprints all over many acts of torture and prisoner mistreatment and so on and so forth. And David, I know, as you and I have talked about before on the show, there has been in this whole torture process a very unholy alliance between psychologists who ought to know better and many of the people who find themselves in positions in Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib come out of the prison system of the United States.
You mean the prison guards?
Prison guards. Yes, prison guards. But the point that I think is a particular fit here with at least some of today's conversation is how uphill a battle this is for Dr. Bond, who is now getting some help for the Center for Constitutional Rights, and some of this has moved into the litigation arena, but that it shouldn't be as lonely as it is to raise this issue of ethics and professional responsibility within the psychological profession, but for the fact that, as we're hearing from another angle, it's pretty goddamn corrupt to begin with. And that's sort of where it all fits together, it seems to me.
I think it fits together perfectly because when people trained in psychology or psychiatry or any form of clinician participate in information extracting techniques, they're already close to the line. And when they sign off on what actually literally is torture, they're gone. I don't understand how that's not such a substantial violation of their code of ethics that they wouldn't be struck off.
Indeed. One would think so.
Well, it's because codes of ethics exist to create the form of discipline without actually imposing discipline for the most part.
No, see, yes, sure, but there's a difference between teaching people to be skillful interrogators. I'm a very good interrogator. I've gotten people to say things that, everybody else involved in the case, from the FBI on down, said I wouldn't be able to. However, everybody who's knowledgeable in any way, shape, form, or manner about, generically, psychology, knows that information obtained under literal torture is utterly unreliable. So what is their purpose then?
Indeed.
Well, and that goes back to some of the stuff that Mike was talking about
yes,
the conclusion I drew about the government, the federal government lately, is just, if you have somebody who seems to be a sadist in a very high position, you can get some pretty sadistic results.
That's for sure.
History's proven that. I don't think that's even an arguable point. But we're not talking about individual acts. We're talking about whether or not we're going to accept the idea of the clinical profession helping to perfect torture techniques.
And, Andrew, just to build on that, with which I think obviously we all agree, not just acquiesce to it, but refuse to pursue even investigations of it, which is a struggle. In this particular case, it involves licensing authorities in the state of Louisiana, but this has been a struggle within the American Psychological Association itself, and once again, it's been an uphill fight for people trying to say, hey, this is our profession. We have a collective responsibility for its standards and its ethics. And in the Department of intentional obliviousness, the default position of everybody is, let's look the other way, let's not talk about this.
Remember, this is not the first government that's ever done this to this particular profession. It happened in the Soviet Union.
Yep.
It happened in Germany in a different way. And, and there's something in it for the people who want to look the other way. They're not just looking the other way. They're looking down at their hand and trying to see what's greasing their palm, frankly.
Actually, what they're doing is recruiting candidates to help them perfect torture techniques. Those same candidates should be best suited to tell them that extracting truthful information under torture is actually an oxymoron. I don't see how you.
Well, you're presuming that they want the truth.
Yes, I am.
That is an important point.
Yeah, and I think they do want the truth. I think if you want to know where the next bomb is going to go off, or what the going rate is for suicide bombers, or the location of something that's important strategically or militarily, you do want the truth.
Well, yeah, if that's the reason, if that's what your anti-terrorist program is all about. But we got lots and lots of reasons to doubt that.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. The issue Frank's talking about is the standards of ethics for a profession. And I'm trying to tell you that if my daughter were kidnapped and one of the kidnappers was captured, I would be opposed
Sure.
to hardcore torture on the ground that it would not produce the truth.
Wouldn't help your daughter.
Right. However,
Exactly.
there are techniques that could. So if the profession itself isn't setting these standards, it's not because of any political position. It's because those who regulate their membership are not acting.
Well, and that's thus my assumption that there's something in it for them economically.
I don't.
Well, why do you think they're not acting?
I think they're not acting because there are many people within the clinical profession who get paid for their testimony. That's the way they make their living. Now, some, like my brother Joel Devoskin, who I don't think there's a better forensic psychologist in America, they are absolutely straight down the line clean. So if you hire him, he'll give you a report. Your choice is to throw the report away or to use it, but he's not going to tailor his testimony to suit your cause. If you want an actual objective assessment, he's your guy. Now, there is no profession that makes its living testifying in court where there aren't people that every lawyer knows he or she can call if you want, shall we say, flexibility in findings.
And as somebody who's done a lot of expert testimony work, when you turn out not to be that person, boy, does that confuse a lot of lawyers.
Yes, indeed it does. But, Andrew, I wonder if I think that's a helpful clarification, and that certainly goes on. But relating it to the point that Mike from Rhode Island was making and this new book and your work I'd be interested in your views. Is there some deeper moral corruption in this profession that has prevented there being more of a moral outcry than I'm aware of, at any rate, about the issues that our mental health system contributes to homelessness and so on? I wonder why there isn't more, I guess I'd call it political agitation, but there's probably another word for it than that. And I'm curious about what your perspective on that is.
How are you going to advocate for a group that is not a group? What is it that you would want if you had a blank piece of paper and you could write down what should be the protocols and standards for dealing with, quote, the homeless?
There's no standard of care, in other words, because there's no standard homeless person.
Right.
And even though there are large sectors of the homeless who, you can deal with the alcoholics with very specific programs, you can deal with the schizophrenics with very specific programs, but but then you're left with a pretty large group with a lot of different issues.
It's more than that. Your pal that called, who works as a member of an ACT team, somewhere on that team is a scriptwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Because without a scriptwriter, you cannot maintain a paranoid schizophrenic in the community.
Right.
You can't do it. But as far as there being some kind of special status of clinicians, that's silly. Every lawyer knows that there are experts who, if the prosecution hires them, the blood spatter is going to clearly indicate the woman was thrown down the stairs. And if the defense hires that same person, blood spatter evidence is going to absolutely prove that she tripped. So why is it confined just to clinicians? Expertise in any matter that's going to be litigated, if it doesn't have ethical standards that prohibit what you're talking about, we're going to continue to have this, in effect, profession of whores.
And this is actually, I've talked a lot about this with my daughter, who's a clinical psychologist. This is actually something that has plagued psychology in this country for all of its existence, basically, is that it's very poorly regulated. They make you jump through a lot of hoops to get your license, but after that, you know, you can sell snake oil, you can sell snake venom, you can sell, you know.
And you can say that the father is a narcissist with sociopathic aura and therefore shouldn't have custody during a, expensive matrimonial case, or the mother is histrionic and probably borderline and certainly shouldn't have custody. Since everybody knows this, I try these cases all the time, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm always asking the judge to do is throw out all the experts. Throw them all out. Because I represent the kid, and the only thing that will benefit the kid is the truth. Let me go find an independent expert, and that person will testify, chips fall where they may.
Uh-huh.
If we're not going to do that, if we're going to continue to reward for sale expertise in a soft science, by that I mean, something other than do these fingerprints match or these ballistics match.
Right. Sure.
You're inviting the kind of behavior you're complaining about.
Mm-hmm. And but my point was that within the profession, there are plenty of people who don't like that idea because it would infringe on their economic well-being.
Sure. Of course.
That was my point about, economics being the driver of that. Listen, let's go take a break for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back with Kevin Gray here on Live from the Land of Hope and Dreams. My guests are Frank Joyce, Andrew Vachss, and in a minute, Agent 00 Soul, Kevin Gray.
And that's why they call me Agent 00 Soul, baby.
Live from Columbia, South Carolina, it's Kevin Gray joining the show, along with Andrew Vachss and Frank Joyce. Kevin,
we'll see how live it is. I heard the first hour of the show, and I've been listening to. My radio went out, and I just caught the last, 20 minutes. So it's been, as always, I always feel on some days I ought to just sit down and listen to the show.
Me too, Kevin. I said that myself.
I tried that once. It didn't work out very well.
No, you can't do that.
And Frank, it was a wonder because I did hear the first hour of the show, and then when I got back into it, and it was just such a relaxed kind of, almost teaching kind of moment, I said, darn, I'm glad Days Ahead didn't blow up in the first hour.
Well,
there you go.
I understand exactly what you're conveying, but trying hard not to say. So let me put this to you since you want it real. What do you know about Kamau?
What do I know about Kamayu?
Yeah.
I know a lot about Kamayu.
Are you burning up the pulpit with the fact that the so-called sex offender registration is being perverted for political purposes?
Well, we talk about...
this is in the state of... Tell everybody who you're talking about with both names. And
you go first, Andrew.
All right, I can only say this because there's certain privileges involved, but you're free to contact Kamau Masharia directly yourself to determine our relationship. I can tell you the following facts. Kamau Masharia, who was formerly known as Robert Lewis, was sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. I'm not talking about some magical DNA nonsense. I'm talking about the victim standing up in court saying, no, he wasn't one of the men who raped me. I'm talking about the rapists taking the stand and saying, yeah, we raped her, but, Lewis, he's a punk kid. He was, he tried to stop us, so we had to slap him around. I'm talking about a man who was sentenced as a sex offender, put in the sex offender program, and kicked out before the day was over. The program said, this guy's not a sex offender. I don't know why you sent him to us, but clearly that's not him. I'm talking about a guy who the warden of the prison told me, everybody here knows Lewis is innocent. He might be the only innocent guy in here. I'm talking about a guy who, when he finally got out after 8 years, because he went in when he was 16 to one of the roughest prisons in America, he's led a life of such exemplary contribution to not just the community but to the world. It would take this program for me to list it. He's been recognized by everybody for his work. Well, a few years ago, some citizens came and asked him to run for local office because they didn't feel they were represented. Well, he entered, and he won. Now, he's running again. So, magically, the sheriff, who is pals with Kamau's opponent, decides Kamau has to register as a sex offender for a crime that took place 40-some years ago, and he's not even registered as a sex offender in the state in which the so-called crime occurred.
Chances are that law didn't exist when he was sentenced or when he was released.
Right. Now here's the kicker. They offered Kamayu a pardon.
This is in South Carolina. That's why it's
relevant.
They offered
him a pardon in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be a precursor to getting a pardon in South Carolina, if he confessed to the crime.
Which he didn't commit.
In
other words, if he had lied to him, they would give him a pardon.
Right.
They
know that he would be lying, according to them.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh hell, he would have been paroled at first eligibility if he just said, the standard mantra, I'm sorry I did it. I have remorse.
And then there would be some question as to whether or not there would have to be a law passed in the General Assembly for him to be taken off the sex offenders registry in the state.
I'm saying
even with a pardon,
that the sex offender registry in South Carolina is perverted because it's being used not to protect the public, but purely to protect the political ambitions of certain people.
Now, it was so strange because the person who was it's all political. Kamayu put a lot of people who were making a lot of money out of the local government out of office and out of power. And those people got folk to come in from outside.
He put them out with exposés?
No, put them out by getting them unelected.
Okay.
Yeah. And now that he's been asked to run for the State House.
They're going full bore after him.
Yep.
So we've been fighting it for a while now. When we've been fighting it for years, and I always, as I said on this program earlier, told Kamayu, well, you have to tell that story, Kamayu, because if you don't tell that story, your enemy are going to tell it. And the sad part about it, Kamayu, as I was saying to him, you have to tell it over and over because they're not going to stop trying to retell it over and over.
That's the truth. But Kamau has never, ever attempted to hide his arrest, incarceration, and release. Never.
Now, you can read a very good version of the story, by the way, at Andrew's website.
It's not a version. It's actually a law review article containing quotes directly from the transcript.
Right.
And it's there. It's a public record. All the citations are there. Nobody's ever even attempted a rebuttal to anything that I said.
Now, the good part of it,
Kevin, you ought to link to that on your Facebook page
I
or
put
your
a link,
website.
I think I put a link to it. But the good part about what's going on in his district, the people have voted him back in office, and the people know that there are folk out there lying about this brother, and they've stood for him.
Yeah, but see, that's not the point. I expected the people to reelect Kamau. He's performed for them. He should be reelected. I'm saying that when you're allowed to use the sex offender registry for political gain, that is the perversion of the law. How come he's not registered as a sex offender in New Jersey, where the crime was committed? Nobody seems to be ready to answer that question.
Well, the state legislators that he's been talking to seem to feel that the only way to solve the problem is through changing the law, and they don't feel as though they have the muscle to get that done.
I agree. You can't. Everybody who's dumb enough to think Megan's law is actually protecting them is going to oppose it, because you can't possibly be seen politically as on the side of sex offenders. But that is not the only way to get Robert Lewis / Kamau Macharia off that registry. There should be a lawsuit in South Carolina pointing out that the sheriff's actions are a perversion of the law and outside the scope of his duties. He's doing it politically. Nobody doubts this. He can't defend this. The idea that local people need to be protected from a man who's lived among them for, 4 decades without a damn traffic ticket is so ludicrous that, it smells the second you open the book.
Well, you should come on down and help. We got Attorney Herb Buell that's gone to court with Kamau on a couple of occasions, and all of us have gone to the hearings. Come on down and file that lawsuit.
Okay, what can people who are outside South Carolina do, if anything?
I think what they should be doing and should have done all along was see if the ACLU is willing to protect anybody but Nazis.
Well, there you have it. I was president of ACLU for a long time, and as I said, the attorney that's representing Kamau was the ACLU attorney. And so in that...
And it hasn't occurred to him that when you act under color of state law to do harm to another, that's a violation of Section 1983 of U.S. Code 42?
Look, Andrew, let me tell you like this. I have sued the state of South Carolina on numerous occasions, suing them now.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening across the board in black politics, in the black community, in human rights politics, on the grassroots level, and I heard Dave talking about fighting from the ground up earlier in the show, is that, dude, we don't have a whole lot of tools to fight these days anymore. And as I said, I've mentioned me kind of in passing, but I'm almost like the all-purpose activist down here. I got so much stuff to do. I'm half crazy myself every damn day. It's the resources and the organization that we had in the past don't exist now, to the point that it's frightening, and it's hard to see where the future lies.
Well, what do you attribute the drop-off in resources to?
Well, as I said, I've listened to the show. This is one of those days that I would rather be listening, but because I've been working on the introduction to my book, The Decline of Black Politics.
All right, so I'll wait for it to come out, and you'll tell me then?
Well, I'll tell you then, but part of it is the last 30 years we spent a whole lot of time electing people and organizing from campaign to campaign, but we haven't spent any time doing anything in between.
You mean building infrastructure?
Building infrastructure or supporting or forcing the organizations that do exist to be more democratic and more proactive on issues and to not be afraid. You've got a lot of now the black middle class leadership or the church leadership of organizations, and they look at a case like Kamayu's, and they don't know how to go about it. Hell, it's hard to get them to take on a case. Even back when I was ACLU, defending a kid that had dreadlocks in high school.
Listen, it's not just white people who believe that Megan's Law is the solution. That the sex registry is a solution and shouldn't be challenged. That crosses a lot of color lines and class lines and everything else. I mean, Andrew's been very articulate about why that isn't very often a solution.
Tell me a case where it has been a solution.
Oh, I just didn't want to sound like I knew more. If you say that it's never been a solution, then I will quote you.
Fine. Go right ahead.
Oh, believe me, I don't have to be invited twice.
There you go.
But I didn't want to, I was actually baiting you, Andrew.
Not hard to do.
I've noticed. But but it's no laughing matter because this when things like this exist, and they exist, I guess, with very good intentions at the beginning.
Really?
Well, I don't know. I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
But even whether or not, right? They open the door for abuse.
They do a lot more damage than that. The door's not only open, but all kinds of bodies have been flung through it.
Similar to Kamayu?
No, I'm talking about people who... I have what the publishers call a very diverse fan base. One person who just loved my books and wrote to me regularly about them from prison, where he was incarcerated for looking up sex offenders on the internet, which now anybody can do, going over to their house and shooting them in the head. How's that?
That's harmful.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a conversation stopper, Andrew.
No, actually it's not. I'll give you the conversation stopper. The last letter I got from this terribly, terribly crazy young man was, by the time you read this, I'll be dead. I realize now that shooting a few of these people, killing a few of them, is not going to change anything. And what I did was all for nothing. And you don't respect me for what I did. And that was like the last straw. That's the last letter I got from him.
Wow.
He was, in fact, dead by the time I got the letter. He took a whole bunch of pills that he'd been saving up and buying from other inmates, swallowed them, lay down on his bunk, put the letter to me between the bars to be picked up, pulled the blankets over his head. They went by, figured the guy's sleeping, so what, grabbed the letter, threw it, and by the time it reached me, he was long since dead.
Well, that is the showstopper.
Conversation.
That is the showstopper. But, so what do we do?
Well, I believe that the person who deliberately inserted Kamal's name on this registry under the transparent cloak of protecting the public violated federal law by using his office as it was not intended to be used. He acted under color of state law to deprive a person of their civil rights maliciously, intentionally, and politically motivated.
Yeah,
all of which it's not hard to show.
I don't know if it's that easy, Andrew. I mean, as I said, being that I'm in the middle of it, the sheriff will claim that he didn't want to do it. He went to SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division, for an opinion that the request was brought to him by a preacher / disbarred lawyer.
Yeah.
Who was acting on behalf of the disempowered chairman of the county council.
Why was the chairman of the county council disempowered?
Well, that was the person that Kamayu
Right.
that Kamayu had been challenging through the years, and this guy was a bad actor. I mean, this guy brought into that county the gold mine with the cyanide pool that people still have to deal with now that the gold mine's left. Sold out all the old black folks' land that had the gold on it. I mean, it's just stuff that you hear on TV.
His defense is that a member of a profession that is not exactly worshipped for its high ethical standards kicked out. That's who he relied on, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, transparent.
Yeah, I don't see how that harms Kamayu's case.
I don't either. And I don't believe that the sheriff went to SLED apropos of nothing. Why would he be asking them?
Well, I would agree with you there. I believe
well, and that just means that SLED should get sued too.
Well, there are other powerful forces behind the defrocked or disembarred men.
You know what you have to do to get disbarred as a lawyer?
Connects to our earlier conversation.
If you met this guy, how do you want I ever became a lawyer or anything else? I wanted to go to his church. Kamayu talked me out of it. I wanted to go to his church and stand up in the middle of the sermon and call him out, but Kamayu said, dude, you don't want to do that in the church. People might flip out because, people down here will go to.
You might have been noticeable in that church, Kevin.
Yeah, my hair would be flaming.
Yeah.
This guy's a preacher?
Yes. Preacher / lawyer.
Well, former lawyer.
Disbarred lawyer.
You get disbarred as a lawyer, and then you preach the words of the Lord.
The last refuge of the scoundrel, brother.
Amen.
Amen. Come on.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Sunday. Gentlemen, I heard y'all talking about torture, but I'm still a black man in America. Hell, America's all about torture. Hell, most people just sitting around waiting to get it. That's the torture. People sitting around waiting to get what they expect bad to happen to them.
Well,
I mean, I can't agree or disagree because I can't speak to how most people feel.
Okay.
And I'm not black, and I'm not one of those white people who feels your pain so intensely that I can speak for you. So I'll take your word for it.
I did a poll of everybody. I have the data on file.
Kevin has more up weeks and more down weeks.
That's right. Yeah.
And we talk about them every week because they are. I mean, the one thing about Kevin is that I know, for instance, on this issue of homelessness and how people who are in difficult mental health circumstances. I mean, Kevin, you went through one of those with the sheriff in your county in Columbia there.
Well, listen, as I said, a lot
lately, right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
My neighbor who has problems, and of course the sheriff had problems with her ex, and he calls the sheriff's department and tells them she's a drug kingpin, and they come to her house 6 cars deep without a warrant. And as I said, it's just the volume of stuff that I get these days from people that just don't know what to do. And they know that they can vote, but that's about it. That doesn't matter to them. They have no power.
A lot of people gave up their lives for you to be able to say that's just about it.
Well, you know what? When you're sitting in the back of a squad car, standing in front of a damn judge, what people gave up in the past for you really doesn't come into play.
That's the ugly truth. Until it hits you, so what? That literally is the ugly truth. People who I call this vast tribe of adults who were abused as children and never came forward for one reason or another, the children of the secret. Well, it's no secret to them, you see. it's no secret to them. But frankly, if you asked people to prioritize truthfully as to what's most important in their life, it would scare the hell out of you. Because nothing that's critically important to you would be on that list.
That's true. And that's not new either.
Right.
As Brother Thoreau pointed out.
So the answer is those people who do give a damn have to make up in intensity what they lack in numbers. Running around looking for federal grants is not my idea of going to war.
No.
Well, you sure don't ask your enemy for the weapons or for the ammunition to go to war against them.
Well, I think that, that people, I mean, Frank knows more about this than me, but in some ways it seemed like in the 60s and 70s, people became so scarred by the image of violence that they decided to adopt much more passive solutions, not nonviolent solutions, just more passive solutions.
Where, in Detroit? In Chicago?
Amongst people who are activist-oriented.
Who are activists, who are self-identified in some
there you go.
sense.
I'll give you a break. Are these activists that are...
Well, they're not anymore.
Well, yeah, but when they were, who was funding them?
Well, I think this is something. The most interesting stuff that I ever read about this is in Jim Foreman's book, The Making of Black Revolutionaries, where he basically talks about it as a continuing problem throughout the height of the Southern Civil Rights Movement, when Jim was with SNCC. And that's about accurate summation, isn't it, guys, of what Jim writes?
I mean, yeah, but and there's activism and there's activism. I mean,
well, you can't get much more activist than being the executive director of SNCC.
Right. I mean, there's desegregating the lunch counter or the public facility, and then there's one night all of a sudden the Woodworths that you couldn't go in having a four-alarm fire. I mean, those are two different kinds of activism, but they're activism.
If you're going to rely on the government to fund your activism,
you're going to fail.
Not only, or you're going to become an advocate for the government.
Yeah. Well, which is. Yes.
Form of one of the many forms of failure.
Yes, exactly.
Or although I'm not a nationalist or a religious type, if you're organizing, what could happen to you is what happened to the Muslim minister in Detroit this last week.
Well, and what happened to Kamayu is different in that only by degree.
Right.
Yes, not by intent. That's right.
The intent is to destroy them.
Go ahead,
Frank.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that we're covering a lot of territory here, but I do believe that much of the activism of the 60s was initially suppressed by government violence, and quite deliberately so, and subsequently by the political mindset that we associate with Ronald Reaganism and so on and so forth. It's funny, I just had occasion this week to have a conversation and teach a little history lesson to somebody about the assassination of Fred Hampton, which we're coming up on the anniversary of. That was December 4th, 1969.
And tomorrow, the anniversary of the shooting in Greensboro.
Right. So a lot of what we think of as the movement and the activism of that time was suppressed the old-fashioned way. And I've long believed that that's an issue that we haven't really come to terms with. But whatever role that played, there was a movement. Its power was spent, for lack of a better way to put it. And as Kevin is pointing out, and as we discuss every week on this show, rebuilding that and re-energizing it and creating more of a structure to intervene in the vast array of injustices that go on every day is what we're here to talk about. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, but, and it's not even an easy thing to talk about and try to build something off the conversation. And I'm not interested in just flapping my jaws, Andrew.
I understand, and frankly, I mean, I'm not a religious person, I personally believe that if there is a God, someone should sue him for malpractice.
Amen to that.
Andrew, if there's a hell, you're going too.
Well, that's two I'm stealing so far in this half hour.
However, the black church is not getting funded by the government unless it's,
well, I don't know about that either.
Oh, a lot of it is. That's a part of what's happening.
That's yeah. I mean, it's not it's not Reverend Franklin and Dr. King and it's the most it's not all Jeremiah Wright.
Yeah, and in the black church, I mean, I'm not romantic about the black church and its role in the civil rights struggle or its role in politics today. I think the black church is moving in the wrong direction as it relates to politics in America, with all these buying into the faith-based initiatives and being so homophobic. And look at what happened in Atlanta with SCLC taking on Bernice King, who's aligned with Eddie Long, who was aligned with George Bush. And that's where we're at.
That is where we're at.
And look.
Even if that, let's take all that to be true, right? So we've been at this for a lot of rounds, me more than either of you guys, simply because I'm older. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as I can still throw a punch, then the fight's not over.
Oh,
none of us is saying that.
That actually is the premise of this show. But the question on any individual struggle, if you catch any individual who's in it on the wrong day, you're liable to get what we got out of Kevin today. And it's likely that Kevin will call me Tuesday morning and say, okay, this is what I think we're going to do next about any of it.
Well, and
I've got nothing but admiration for what Kevin does, and nothing but.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just saying. This is not where we usually find Brother Gray.
Hey, listen, gentlemen, I've been writing the introduction to the decline of black politics for the last 2 weeks. It is a depressing thing to do.
It's funny, but I get it.
You're right. Brother, I have to laugh when every number you look at is just horrible. And you realize everything that Dave said at the beginning of the show, that it has to be built from the grassroots up. And there are all kinds of little things and big things, or little things that are big things that you have to knock out the way.
Well, and what if this show has a purpose, an overriding purpose, and if there's a reason for Andrew to spend so generously this amount of time, and for Kevin and Frank to do the same, and for that matter, for me to give up professional football for it, it's
I'm not going to claim that I gave that up.
Well,
I gave it up when the Panthers lost last week.
Well,
hey, I'm from Detroit. I don't need to say a word.
But if there is a point, it is that these discussions move things 1 inch closer to people picking up their phone, their pen, their feet, their body,
their keyboard,
their guitar, I know you didn't mean that kind of keyboard, their website, their trade union card, and doing one thing that moves all of this a step forward. Because it wasn't the civil rights movement, it wasn't the anti-war movement. When I came into it in the late 60s, it was called the freedom movement.
There you go.
Mm.
And to me, what the novels of Andrew Vachss are about, in a lot of ways, is about people yearning to be free.
And willing to pay what it cost.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you can't sit in,
Well, and the truth of the matter is that until you're ready to pay what it costs and begin paying it, your freedom is an illusion.
I agree, and the sideline is your permanent home. No spectator ever won a fight.
Right.
So
I always love James Berman.
I get, I don't know how many dozen emails a week at the website, essentially saying, keep up the good work. And we actually have a macro to answer that, which is, you think I need your encouragement? You think you're motivating me?
Well, we're down to a minute and a half left in the program, so I want to. What else does it say, Andrew?
It says, unless and until you're ready to join that work, go to Starbucks and share your opinion with someone who cares.
Now, let me say that the first time that Andrew was on Sirius with me, we sat in the room with somebody who joined Protect and changed their life. And she'll never give up. She'll never be the same person, and she was a pretty great person to begin with. And, it's just never going to be the same. And,
I saw her eyes go on fire, so.
Yeah. Well, you created the right kind of monster that day, that's for sure. And we can change things. And I think that's part of what Andrew's been goading me to say today in a funny way this last few minutes is, yes, we can change things.
Yeah, we can.
And yes, we are changing things. So get out there, read Haiku if you have a mind to. I think that you'll get a lot out of it. Join Protect. Go to protect.org and join it. That'll be taken a stride. Find out about who the Kamayu is in your neighborhood. And if you live anywhere near South Carolina, find out what they need down there and give them a hand.
Amen.
And keep talking to people. Because it's you, me, and the other guy that's going to change this thing. Not a president, not a congressman. See you next week.